Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. If you are a voice provider, that would be including VoIP providers, and even if you're just reselling somebody's voice service, there's a deadline today for filing in the Robocall Mitigation Database. Be right back with more. Thanks for joining me. Rick Husey here with Zquorum with Broadband Deployment News. So I want to make sure you're aware of this. Again, especially I think if you're a reseller of voice services, because you may not be thinking about this because you don't have any technical play as far as mitigating robocalls from the standpoint of authenticating traffic and caller ID and those kinds of things. If you're just reselling somebody else's voice service, they should be compliant with that, and hopefully are. But you still need to file. There's some important reasons to do that. I'll talk about that here in just a moment. So first off, I did want to let you know that we provide outsourced voice services, basically cloud-based voice service. So if you're interested in doing that, reach out to us. But also, if you are one of our customers, please know that the stir shaken requirements and the robocall mitigation stuff, all of that technical stuff is handled on the back end. You don't need to worry about that. But again, there is a requirement that you file in the database. That was changed later. At first it was just going to be the kind of the facilities-based voice infrastructure folks, and the gateway providers, those kinds of things. But there's an important thing that every retail service provider needs to provide, even if they don't have any infrastructure at all. So we'll talk about that today. So this public notice you see went out on January 25th. And this is a public notice. I linked to this and a few other things in the description of this video that I'll mention as I go through them. So you see here, Wireline Competition Bureau announces Robocall Mitigation Database filing deadlines and instructions and additional compliance dates. So again, this was January 25th. So it was really only a month that I think folks had to get some of this new stuff filed in there. So you see here, this public notice announces effective dates and compliance deadlines for revised Robocall Mitigation Database filing requirements and related rules adopted in the 6 caller ID authentication report and order. Pertinent to these rules, or pursuant to these rules, all providers, regardless of whether they are required to implement stir shaken, including all intermediate providers and providers that lack control over the network infrastructure necessary to implement stir shaken, are now required to file certifications and robocall mitigation plans to the Robocall Mitigation Database. So stir shaken, I also linked in the description of the video, this video, a link to another video that I did a while back with Rebecca Johnson from Numerical, where we talked about stir shaken. So it's kind of a primer on what stir shaken is. So you can check that out. But kind of in summary, stir shaken is what the FCC was putting in place on the technical side to make sure that call traffic, as it's kind of passed from one service provider to another, the gateway providers, and it transits from the originating source of the call all the way to the destination source, that information is tracked the whole way, so that people can't do things like spoof, or it's harder to spoof caller ID, and it's also easier to track down people that are doing robocalling, which everybody hates, right? So stir shaken, the technical part of things, has been implemented for a while, but this database is something that every service provider needs to file in, and it's basically a certification that you have implemented stir shaken, or if you're a reseller, like I'm saying, some people don't have any part technically of stir shaken, like it mentions here, including those that lack control over the network infrastructure necessary to do that, you still need to file. Providers newly required to file in the Robocall Mitigation Database must submit their initial filings containing all required information and certification by February 26, 2024. So what happens if you don't do that? That's today, as I'm doing this video. It's not the end of the world. You still need to file. However, you've got a date coming up that could cause an issue. So you see here, existing filers must update their Robocall Mitigation Database submissions to provide all newly required information and certificates by that same date. So if you've already filed, you need to update that as well with the new stuff. Intermediate providers and voice service providers are already required to refuse traffic from any voice service provider or gateway provider that is not listed in the Robocall Mitigation Database. Beginning on May 28, 2024, they will also be prohibited from accepting traffic from any non-gateway intermediate provider not listed in the Robocall Mitigation Database. So I believe that means that if you're not in the database, and that it could be that you would, not then be able to originate traffic, even your customers, even if you have nothing to do with providing the actual technical service, you're just reselling it. So stated differently, voice service providers and intermediate providers must refuse to carry traffic from any provider that's not listed in the Robocall Mitigation Database as of May 28, 2024. The Robocall Mitigation Database submission portal is now open to accept new and updated filings to assist filers with compliance. This public notice provides an overview of the expanded Robocall Mitigation Database filing requirements, along with filing instructions regarding the format of required submissions. And I'll go through this a little bit. And again, I linked to this document. Pursuant to the standard, a provider's program is sufficient if it includes detailed practices that can reasonably be expected to significantly reduce the carrying or processing for intermediate providers or origination for voice service providers of illegal robocalls. Each provider must comply with the practices that its program requires, and its program is insufficient if the provider knowingly or through negligence carries or processes calls for intermediate providers or originates for voice service providers unlawful robocall campaigns. So as an example, if you are a reseller of voice services and you sign up a customer, it could be a business customer, and let's say you don't do your due diligence on who they are, and it turns out that they are opening up a call center. Really, it's going to be a robocall blasting kind of thing. If you do that, if you're not taking some measure to know your customer, and that's what they call it, know your customer, then I guess you haven't, you basically through negligence have allowed that to happen. So that's one of the things I think that's most important for voice service providers that are not facilities based. You're basically reselling another provider of voice services, and you're signing up the customers, you're working through their system to make sure the customers get the phone numbers, but generally they're provided by that third-party provider. You're not doing that, but you're signing up the customers. They're on your network. They're transmitting data through your broadband network, let's say. You're originating that traffic. And again, the one thing you can do is make sure that you know your customer and that you have some things in place, as far as if it's a business, making sure that you confirm who they are, check their address, how long have they been in business, maybe how long have they been at address, just due diligence on knowing your customer and then finding out what they want the services for. We're a pizza shop and we want to take orders for pizza, something like that, versus we're a call center. Then you want to look into that a little bit closer. Or we're a telemarketing company. That's, you want to look into those things a little bit more carefully and find out exactly what they're doing. The other thing that you want to do is make sure that you don't have, or make sure that you do have, in your terms of service, as people sign up for your service, that they understand that if there's any reports of any kind of abuse on this, that you can immediately terminate service to a particular device or that customer because they are abusing the service in that case. So those are the kinds of things that you want to have in place just as a reseller service. All providers must submit or resubmit a filing to the Robocall Mitigation Database that includes the following: certification stating that all calls that they originate on their network are subject to a robocall mitigation program meeting the requirements above. Then a prior certification has not been removed by commission action, that they have not been prohibited from filing the Robocall Mitigation Database, and whether they have fully, partially, or not implemented STIR/SHAKEN on the IP portions of their network. And for most resellers, they're not going to implement STIR/SHAKEN, but their underlying provider would have. And what I see on a lot of these filings is some of them will say that we're in full compliance because our underlying provider is. And then they add the additional information about knowing their customer and those kinds of things. But a lot of what you would file would be basically falling upon your underlying provider. But again, you've got the know your customer part because your underlying provider doesn't know the customer. You're the one that's selling that. A robocall mitigation plan that describes the specific reasonable steps that the provider has taken to avoid the origination, carrying, or processing of illegal robocall traffic as part of its robocall mitigation program, and includes other required contents described below, the provider's business name, address, and other identifying information, and certain additional information as described below. So I'm not going to go through all of this. I just want to make you aware of those things and that you can find this resource to get more information. Mentions here additional information to be provided with robocall mitigation plans. Consistent with existing prior obligations, all providers must upload a robocall mitigation plan to the Robocall Mitigation Database portal that describes the specific reasonable steps the provider has taken to avoid, as applicable, the origination, carrying, or processing of illegal robocall traffic as part of its robocall mitigation program. So in addition to going into the form and selecting certain things when you file your certification, you also upload a robocall mitigation plan, and that can be one page. And generally, especially if you're a reseller, it's going to be one page, and there's just specific things you want to say. And you can actually go up here. I linked to this. This is a Robocall Mitigation Database. And you can go in here. You can search for a particular provider, or you can just start looking at some of these and see what they have filed. You got to scroll down here. I've got everything kind of blown up, but you can see the name. Like here's Otelco, Carrier X, Nology, got Valley Telephone Company, Otelco again, Mid-Missouri. So you can see what they have filed. What do we have here? So we got business address, implementation. You'll see some of them say partial stir shaken implementation performing a robocall mitigation. That may be a provider that is not doing the technical part. Some say complete stir shaken. And I've seen complete stir shaken even on resellers because, again, their underlying provider is compliant. So that's what's important. So, and as we scroll over here, we see voice service provider. They're all going to say yes, I think, because they're all like voice service providers. Gateway provider, these are all going to be no. So the gateway providers are kind of the middleman, I think. Non-gateway intermediate provider, probably similar. Robocall mitigation contact name, you'd need that in there. Contact title, contact department, and then business address and telephone numbers. That's your contact stuff. And then you got an attachment link here where you can download things. So I was going to look for, let's just pick one. Let's look at Valley, Technology, Carrier X. I don't know what Carrier X is. Just going to pick one. Go up here, download. See if I can actually open it. And oops, it's over here. Let me pull that in. So, wow, internet and cable. Okay, so this is their robo plan. This is a little bit longer than others I've seen. But you see you got here, know your upstream provider. You don't, if you're a reseller of the services, you don't really know the upstream provider. You know the reseller that you're working with. But I think this would be more the people at the provider of voice services, the actual provider, not the reseller as an upstream provider. Traceback, this is something else. You want to make sure that if you got a traceback request from, let's say, somebody that you sold voice service to that has been seen as doing robocalling or some other kind of fraud, then you need to be able to assist wherever you can on that. So that's what that is. Again, we got know your upstream provider, know your customer. You see here, WOW has procedures in place to prevent new and renewing customers from using our network to originate illegal robocalls. They thoroughly vet new residential and business customers as follows. They're asked to provide their full name, address, date of birth, phone number, email, establish a PIN or password. Business customers are asked to provide their full name, address, physical and mailing, if different. Tax ID number, you see that a lot on these. Phone number and email and establish a PIN. So you can see there's not a lot to know when you're knowing your business customer. You just need to know. You don't just sign somebody up and not know their address. And again, something good maybe to put on there would be, what's your address? How long have you been at that address? So it kind of tells you, and how long they just open up, that kind of thing. So that's good information to know. You see a lot of this stuff, if you are reselling the service, would be more what that should be referring to your partner, the voice service provider. Like, for example, if you're getting voice through us, through our Voice Select product, you might refer to us or one of our underlying providers right there. WOW Internet Cable and Phone blocks the origination of calls from unassigned telephone numbers. This is the kind of thing where the actual service provider of voice, not the reseller, would be doing this stuff. So you would refer to that in this. Most of these are one page as I looked at them. So that that kind of gives you an idea. And again, you can search for any particular company if you happen to know one and you want to see how they file, or just look at these and see something that might make sense for you. Let's see if there's anything else. I think that was all I wanted to talk about on that. So I linked to that document. I linked to this database. You can find that easy in the description. And then also, I think it's linked from the public notice there, but there's a Robocall Mitigation Database filing instructions. So it's pretty detailed on what you have to do. You have to have a FCC registration number, an FRN. And if you're a broadband provider, I think you already have one. You need that. Yeah, you need that to file your broadband data collection information. So you would need that, and you would go into the Robocall database and file within there. And there's a lot of information in here about how you do that, what you need to check. Just scrolling through this to see. As you get to some forms, shows you what the forms look like in there as you do that. Contact information, additional information, voice service role in the call chain, voice service provided with stir shaken implementation. I think if you're a reseller, I believe you'd select this, voice service provider without a stir shaken obligation, I believe. And by the way, I'm not an attorney, so make sure that you, as you go through this, you run this through whoever your regulatory compliance attorney, advisor, counsel, whatever it is, that you check all of this out. Let's see if there's anything else here. This gateway providers. I was thinking there was the options. Yeah, here we go. So Robocall Mitigation Database, external filing instructions again here. So option 1, complete stir shaken implementation, or you can do a partial stir shaken implementation or no stir shaken implementation. But again, I think, again, I'm not advising you, but I think a lot of people will select this because if they're, and then they'll refer to the company that they buy the voice services from, that they're reselling, because that company has implemented fully stir shaken. So the company that's reselling that service really is fully stir shaken compliant. So that's where I think you would want to check that box. But again, check with your attorney before you check that box, if you would. So again, this is a perfect document to send to your attorney and say, hey, we need to file this. What's your opinion on this? And then you can go from there. So again, I want to mention that I do have this video up there if you want to know what stir shaken is. That's a good background on what it is, and it kind of tells you what's required on the technical side. The know your customer might be mentioned in that video. I can't recall if we discussed that, but that is an important part of it. And as a reseller, you need to know that. I'm assuming that everybody that is a facilities-based provider is already kind of on top of this and knows it. I think it's those that are reselling somebody else's services that they might have been taken by surprise by this. I know I saw, what brought this to my attention is I saw ACA Connect send out some letters, I think it was last week, about this to various people that are on their mailing lists, cable companies and others. And a lot of times it is cable companies that are providing voice service. And a lot of times they are not doing it themselves. They are working with a reseller like us. So important to get this done, but it took, I think, a lot of people by surprise. So wanted to make sure everyone was aware of this. So if you've got any questions, you can type them in the comments on YouTube, and I will try to get back to you with what I know, or get with some of our underlying providers to see what I can tell you there. You see our web address and email address here as well. You can send something to our email address. And again, we do provide voice services under the Voice Select brand. I'll go ahead and link to that. I didn't put that in the description of the video. I'll go ahead and put that as well. So if you are not providing voice services and you want a way to do that easily, relatively speaking, and inexpensively, relatively speaking. In other words, you don't need to buy the equipment, set it up. You don't need to switch. You don't need to worry about all the phone numbers and number porting and all of that stuff. Basically, your role as a reseller of our Voice Select service would be to sign up customers, and then you provide them with the equipment, whatever that might be. Could be a cable modem with a MTA in it. In other words, it can do voice calling, or it could be an ATA on the side of that cable modem, or it could be, if you're doing commercial voice, we've got everything from residential to commercial. So if they're going to do IP PBX kind of stuff, you can provide the IP phones to do that. So you provide the equipment at the customer site, but we take care of everything else on the back end, including phone numbers and including E911, stir shaking stuff, all taken care of. You don't need to worry about that. So again, you need to worry about knowing your customer, who you're signing up for the service, providing the equipment to them, and then working through our system to get phone numbers, port numbers, whatever you're doing there. That all gets taken care of for you. So you can check that out. And again, I'll go ahead and link to that as well in the video directly, but you can go to our website at zquorum.com and look for voice service or the voice select product, and you'll see that. So hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully it's not a shock for you and you're not panicking right now. Again, I don't think there's going to be any consequences for you, like fines or anything like that, if you don't file today. I think the FCC is aware that a lot of, especially those that don't have any technical things going on as far as stir shaking, they're probably aware that not everybody is aware of this. So I'm trying to make you aware of that. So I wouldn't worry about that. But I would certainly file as soon as you can. I would certainly file before that May date, because I don't know what would happen if you're not in the database. And then, it could be that your reseller partner will stop. If you're not in there, your reseller partner might not take your traffic. So you may have already gotten an email from your reseller partner on that about getting that done. So make sure you get that done as soon as possible if you're not in there. And you certainly can look yourself up in the database as well. So you can check your company name, see if you're in there, see if it's got everything up to date as far as what the FCC is requiring with these latest requirements. So you want to make sure, again, you run through what you've filed already and see if that needs to be updated. Most likely it does, based on what I was just reading there. So thanks for joining me. If this was helpful, if you give me a like on the video, I'd appreciate it. And subscribe to our channel. Click the bell when you subscribe and you'll be notified when I'm live. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.